If you have short hair or you're thinking about going short, pay attention. You do not want to get this wrong. Let's talk about this year's short hair trends. Now, the internet is doing what the internet does best, taking normal haircuts, renaming them like they've just invented them, and then acting like you're behind if you don't keep up, right? I have scoured the internet to figure out what everyone is saying about this year's short hair trend. And I'm gonna break down what these cuts actually are, what you need to watch out for, and how to talk to your stylist about them in a way that won't get you accidentally chopped into something that you never asked for. And yes, I'm gonna say up front, do not trust these haircut names because they're stupid. They really are. The names are so dumb. They're so ridiculous. Let's start out with number one, which is the Bixie, the Pixie Bob Hybrid. Now, first of all, this has been around for a while, but this one right now is being thrown around like it has some sort of universal agreed definition, and it does not. Okay, so a couple articles I saw mentioned Bixie cuts, but then the photos were actually not technically Bixies, and the names they gave them were totally different. For example, one article actually shows what they call a soft pixie, but then they describe it as the love child of a pixie bob, which is literally a Bixie, not a soft pixie. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, here's where the danger on this comes in. Pixies and bobs live on opposite ends of that length spectrum, right? A bob can sit at the shoulders or even a little bit longer, whereas a pixie could be extremely short, like a quarter of an inch of hair all over your head. So when someone says Bixie, the range of interpretation is massive. You and your stylist are picturing different ends of that spectrum. Things are gonna go sideways real quick. Not in a good way. Is sideways ever a good way? I don't think so. But with that said, I actually love this length range. I hate the name, but I love the length. See, it gives you something really important. You still feel like you have hair, but it's short enough that we can really carve a solid shape into it. Now, that's the real benefit here. So you get comfort from the length, but you also get lift, structure, and movement that honestly, longer hair often just has a much harder time achieving. Now, if you taper the sides and the nape tighter while keeping a little bit of length on top and through the temples, you're gonna instantly lift the eye and emphasize cheekbone structure. But if you leave too much fullness on the sides, the face can feel a little bit wider. If your face already feels kind of long, then that same fullness can actually help balance the proportions and add a little bit of width to your face. So here's the deal. This length range works on most hair textures and face shape. But I will say that if the hair is very thick, it's gonna need some intentional layering through the sides and especially on the back, just so that it doesn't collapse on top and get just too full by comparison because the top is so flat. End of the day, if you're currently wearing longer hair or like a longer bob and you're thinking about going shorter, this is definitely one of the smartest transition cuts you could possibly make. So what's new about this for this upcoming year? Well, the articles are basically pushing this idea of hidden layers or kind of minimal layering. Now, the issue, this is a big issue, is that when you remove the layering too aggressively, you also remove your ability to cut shape into the hair. Like I said, that's one of the biggest advantages of this haircut. So if you eliminate that tool, you're keeping a lot of the risks, but you're losing a lot of that potential reward. So while I love this cut, I would just say pay attention to the way you're approaching it and approach it more as a Bixie and not the new version of a non-layered Bixie. Now, before we move on, I gotta say this, and it matters. If you're someone who reads these trend articles, you cannot assume that the photos are accurate representations of what the article is actually describing. If you walk into a salon using only a haircut name and you trust that it will magically translate into the photo that you have in your mind, I promise you, you're setting yourself up for a huge disappointment. And let's be honest about these names for a second. Most of these really exist for marketing, not necessarily for clarity in terms of describing what you want. They're basically just recycled shapes with new labels, and the result is a confusion for both clients as well as stylists. I literally don't know who finds these photos. Some of them are so off. Here's the rule, if you will. Always bring photos. Do not rely on the name alone. You know what? Just allow me to do this for you. I'll go ahead and I'll keep my finger on the pulse in the articles, figure out what they're naming all of these
new trends.
And then we can do these videos where I explain what exactly is happening and what you need to be aware of regarding them. So if you actually do like this kind of content, just comment below, let me know, and we'll continue making more of this. And you don't have to worry about a weird name, makes no sense, and you getting something that isn't even the name. You know what I mean? Okay, now don't worry. We are definitely gonna get to Pixie and short haircuts here in just a second, but let's talk about the textured French bob. Okay, so the textured French bob is basically being positioned as like the refined answer to messy hair or kind of messier bob shape. Now, a lot of articles agree on the basic core idea of this, which is that this bob lives between the jawline and the chin. Okay, so basically here and up here. But the shape itself is more just kind of rounded and kind of, I don't want to say coiffed, but a little less crazy messy. But now, what's different for this year? Well, it's basically the language they're using. They're calling it couture and luxe or expensive, which honestly just raises the question, what does expensive hair even mean? Where did this come from? All of a sudden, it's all over the place. I actually have something very specific I want to say about that. We'll talk about it in a second. But right now, let's talk about what actually matters. See, when a bob hits at, near, or around the chin, it can make the face feel fuller and less bulk is removed strategically around the cheeks and the jaw. See, that usually means some sort of internal layering or building height through the crown to achieve that. One way you can achieve it is a strong side part, which actually can completely change how the shape reads on the face, as well as by helping create more volume on top, which automatically creates the illusion of less volume on the side. Now, this is great for anyone who has a fuller face and wants to elongate it, but another overlooked detail here is the neckline. See, if your neckline sits lower, like on the lower end side, and the front is cut to the chin, then the haircut can visually drag in the back because it has to be longer in the back to cover that neckline. And in some cases, that might mean that the neckline actually needs to be shaved so that you can actually get the back up high enough so that it doesn't look like it's dragging in the back. So here are a couple other photos that aren't technically what they're talking about in terms of this bob shape, but at the same time, it is kind of a representation of these bobs in the terms that they still have movement and they're still, in my opinion, very elegant. So I guess just don't get stuck thinking that this haircut only works at one exact length, because I just think that's very limiting. Now, let's get back to this whole luxury or expensive hair thing for a second. Ugh, it's painful. So one of the best things about bob hairstyles is that they have a tendency to be a direct representation of how you're dressed. For instance, if you're dressed more corporate, then the bob haircut's gonna have the tendency to look more kind of conservative. But if you take that exact same bob haircut, same style, and you dress kind of funky, then all of a sudden now that same style has a little bit more edge to it. To me, that's one of the biggest attributes of a bob haircut. It's really not about the haircut itself being cheap or expensive. It's the styling and the intention are gonna kind of determine the vibe. Styling of your dress or how you dress and the kind of intention of the way you wear it. The whole, expensive, cheap, I don't even, what? Just why? Why? Please tell me why. Someone make it make sense. Let's talk about Soft Sculpted Pixie. It's kind of, I guess some people are calling it the anti-spiky pixie. Here's the deal. Pixies are everywhere again, but a little bit kind of not the way that they used to be. See, every major article I found agrees on one thing. The spiky, heavily gelled, overly contrived pixie is gone. And I'd have a tendency to agree with that. See, this year's pixie is a little bit softer on top and kind of more precise around the edges. That means like shorter in the nape, cleaner sideburns, a little bit shorter as well, but there's still more movement and length through the top and on the crown. Now, some articles are gonna call it soft, some call it sculpted, and honestly, that sounds kind of contradictory, but really it's not, because the softness comes from the top, having a little bit of extra length and having a little bit of extra movement, where the sculpted part is really speaking to the back, the perimeter, the sides, around the temples, right? Being a bit shorter and a little bit more, well, just kind of intentional. And that contrast is, to me, what kind of keeps it feeling feminine without feeling kind of dated, right? These shapes are incredibly versatile. They can lead towards edgy or they can lead towards refined, really depending on how you style them. And that is one of the things that I love about these so much. I will say though that product choice matters here. A wax or a texture cream gives you control without the stiffness. Now, if you rely on a hairspray and you lock everything down after it's dry, this is definitely going to start feeling very rigid, and that's what's going to age that look really quickly. If you look at the description or the pinned comment, or you look at the shopping down here, I'll show you the wax that I like. But waxes, to me, and this shape, they really do kind of go hand in hand. Like, the product in this specific scenario actually does make a huge impact on the way the cut actually looks because of its short length. That makes sense? I hope so. Now, another thing that matters a lot on this is going to be your neckline growth pattern. That's something I don't hear a lot of people talking about, but it's legitimately important. See, if your neckline grows towards the center or has really strong cowlicks, actually taking it really tight like this is going to work in your favor. It's going to feel short, and it might feel a little bit too short for you, but it's going to address all of the issues that come with those kinds of hairlines. On the opposite side, if your hairline grows kind of forward or just kind of down, then leaving a little bit of softness around that perimeter actually helps to kind of draw more emphasis forward, and it accentuates the jaw structure a little bit more from the profile. So to me, even though I like the idea of everything being tight like this, I think actually leaving a little bit of that softness would do you a better favor than taking it too tight. Now, one other little detail about this particular shape being so tight on the back and the sides is that the tight sides with the length left through the temples and the top actually helps to create volume exactly where the face needs it. That little taper effect visually lifts the cheekbones and actually enhances a facial structure. So even though it's kind of just happened to be part of this trend, it also just works really well for any pixie regardless of the trends. I love these. To me, there's also a version of this that's undercut. So it's basically shaved, almost like mine, but even tighter on the sides. And then the top actually hangs over it. That's a really cool look too. If it's something that you're comfortable doing, because it's going to be a lot edgier, it's kind of the extreme version of this trend, if you would. And I am a huge fan. But with all of that said, even though the tighter, almost shaved perimeter is part of this trend, I wouldn't say that's what defines a pixie cut that looks bad or looks good. For instance, the idea of having longer hair on top and shorter on the sides, don't write that off completely. It just leave a little bit of extra length on the sides, a little bit longer than it totally shaved, and leave a little bit longer length on the top, just so that the top is longer by comparison to the sides. The sides just need to be a little bit more structured. And if I'm completely honest, regardless of trend or year, that's been basically the better shape or the better way of approaching pixies. Either way, it's just kind of the way that pixies typically work the best. So there you go. This is just a more extreme version of that. Okay, so here's the overall takeaway from this. The trends didn't reinvent short hair. Okay, they mildly maybe kind of refined it. Basically, it's a lot of the same shapes, slightly different execution, and honestly, a bunch of stupid and confusing new names that don't matter nearly as much as the proportions or the structure. I feel like an old grumpy man. The stupid name. Look, if you're thinking about going short this year, just focus on shape, okay? Focus on length range, and more importantly, focus on how the cut interacts with your face, and if it's short, your neckline. Those are the things that are really gonna make it feel comfortable and therefore make you feel confident. And again, if you want me to keep breaking down trends like this so that you don't have to translate the internet, let me know. Comment below. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. It is absolutely free, and you can unsubscribe at any time, but it legitimately does help the channel. And if you like this video, you're probably gonna love this video. So why don't you head over there, and I'll see you over there. Take care now. Have a good one. Bye. I wouldn't say that that's the defining. I wouldn't say that that's what's defining. Oh my God. Sorry, dude.